Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar. Today's topic will be the practical approach to workload management. The first part of the webinar will focus on presenting the why, the what and the how of workload management. And on the second section, I'll show you how to implement workload management simply and easily using the AthleteMonitoring platform. The third part of the webinar will be a question and answer period. Take notes of all your questions and then keep them for the end, and I'll be happy to answer. So we start with the role of workload management. Why do we monitor workload or load? Well, the first reason, in my view, is that it's to keep athletes fit, healthy, ready to perform. So that's number one. We need them to be on the field, we need them to be on the bike, we need them to be in the pool and to be fit and healthy. Athletes who are not fit and not healthy or not motivated, they are not ready to perform. Number two, it's to mitigate the risk of injuries. So now we know that there are some special conditions and situations when athletes are at the risk of injury increase, the risk of illness increase. There are plenty of research now addressing those topics, and they are, even if there are still some doubt and it's not 100% often clear, but there are enough evidence, enough risk factors that have been demonstrated that we can mitigate the risk of injury fairly effectively. And number three, it's provide data to inform day-to-day coaching decision. So to keep athletes fit and healthy and ready to perform, you need to modify program. You need to individualize training. You need to adapt program based on the response of the athlete. Well, having data to inform this kind of decision, it's one of the role of workload management. When do injury occurs? There are plenty of situations when injury can occur. But we can point out two main reasons, and even one main reason. When athletes are excessively tired, excessively fatigued, physically and mentally, that's the number one reason. And then if we take two subsections of that, and we have two specific situations. When athletes are fit but in need to rest, you have a top level athletes training super fit, super healthy, but they need a break and they don't get this break, and at some point the body or the mind says stop. So that's exactly the scenario that we see on the right side of this slide with world champion skier Lara Gut from Switzerland, who broke her knee last year, and she said, well, there is no bad luck in an injury. That's the translation in English over there of the newspaper article, and she was saying the rhythm was frenetic, time was flying too fast, I never had a minute to relax, and I asked for a break for a month. She didn't get the break, and then she got injured. Another situation is when athletes are psychologically and physically unfit to cope with the workload. So this typically, this can happen every time and everywhere, even if with a very fit athlete, and when you apply a super big load, well, the athlete is not ready for that, then you're gonna get an injury. Also, in two specific situations, after a long break, an off season for example, or after an injury, return to play, it's always a tricky period. The graph or the image below, we see collegiate volleyball injuries. So we see here the two big periods when you have a lot of injuries. They are just coming back from the summer break and the winter break. Steps to workload management. If we take that very, very simply, if we break down everything and you just extract the most important steps, well, we have them here. There are just three. Number one, you monitor fatigue, sports and non-sports stressors, psychological and psychological, of course, mental and physical. Number two, you detect excessive fatigue and inadequate workload. When workload is too high, too low, increasing too fast, etc. And then you adapt the workload, you increase or you decrease recovery and rest based on individual response. On the right side here, that's a very interesting comment from a professional rugby player just last week actually. It's a discussion about a strike in professional rugby in England, and Christian Day here is representative of the Rugby Players Association. They are discussing, complaining that the season is too long and they don't have any time for a break. And what he said in the article, it was professional sports is hard, not just physically but mentally too. Rest is important, is crucial, it's vital. So it's very important to take rest into consideration, even if there are a lot of pressure, external pressure to have those players play. Well, they are not robots, they need a break to make it work. So now we know that it's important. We know that workload management are the 3 different steps, and now how to make it work. So first of all, you need a trust relationship with coaches and athletes. So they provide feedback constantly and honestly. That's number 1. If you don't communicate with coaches and athletes, and if they don't trust you or if you don't trust them, well, that's going to be reciprocal and they will not provide any feedback, and then the monitoring program will just don't work. Then number 2, today with technology, it's very easy to get lost in data. You get sensors and that can track thousands of metrics in seconds. So that's very, very, very easy to get lost in all this data if you don't focus on just what's really important. So the number 2 point here is to focus on data that truly helps the performance, the fatigue management, and the risk management. So you need to extract only the thing that really matters and then keep track of that and monitor them very carefully. Number 3, only collect data that you'll use and you can explain easily. If you collect data that you don't use, well, why collecting it? It's just cluttering your computer, cluttering your screen and your graphs, and you'll be wasting time trying to analyze it. Another thing is that it must be simple enough to explain. You should be able to explain the data and what it means to coaches and athletes. Because if not, then they will see, well, you know what, this is not useful. What I'm doing with that, that's too complicated. So and they'll move on, and the data will not be used. So make sure that just the data you use and that you can explain. And of course, keep it practically relevant. It should be relevant to the sport, to the performance, and to the health of the athlete. And number 4, start with simple but validated tools before adding more specialized and in particular technological tools. Sorry. On the graph here, that's a study that came out in September 2017 from England. It's a study about the current landscape of for global positioning system (GPS) and used in Premiership rugby clubs, so in professional rugby clubs. So they did a survey of the different rugby clubs and asked the practitioner what kind of tools you use and what measurements are the most you judge as being the most valuable for the management of injury risk. And what they found is that you have different elements here. So the GPS is here, and then on the right side, so the higher the number, the best the result. You get RP, session RP, well-being questionnaire, neuromuscular function, and heart rate. So those 4 elements are being judged as the most useful and the most effective ways of managing injury risk for professional practitioners. So it's not necessarily the high-tech tools that are being judged the most valuable. It's here you have subjective and combination of a subjective objective, and then here you have some tests. Here you have some well-being wellness questionnaires. What to monitor? So I really like this quote from Leonardo da Vinci. That's an old quote, but it's still valid in plenty of things in life, not just in monitoring or workload management. Keep it simple. So to keep it simple, we'll focus just on specific metrics that have been proven and documented as being useful, meaningful, and effective in managing load and preventing injuries. So the first one is the session load. So that's the main unit of training load. We use the session RPE here, so that's the duration in minute time, the global difficulty of the session perceived by the athlete. That's the base unit. Then from that, you can calculate chronic load, which is the 4 to 6 week, depending of that can change a little bit, load average. And that's typically the kind of load, you see the blues on it here, that's exactly that, the chronic load. That's the link to fitness. The higher the chronic load the athlete is able to sustain, the higher his fitness level or her fitness level. Then you have the acute load. The acute load is a 3 to 7 day cumulative load. So that's the pink load here. So that's typically 1 week load, and that's typically linked to fatigue. Then you have the acute chronic workload ratio. So that's the work from Tim Gabbett, where you can see that's a black line here, where that allows you to keep player in the high load, low risk zone. There is a zone in which you can apply a high load to the athlete and the risk of injury is still low. That's the beauty of this acute chronic workload method, is that it helps you to position or to know exactly at what place the athlete is, and in this particular continuum before, and so you can manage load to maximize the load while minimizing the injury. And then you have the freshness index here, that is a differential between acute and chronic, and represented by the yellow zone here. Now here I use the session load as session RPE. Now in many professional teams you have GPS measurements, and a lot of practitioners and sports scientists are using GPS metrics to calculate chronic and acute. That's perfectly fine. It works very well, and can also kind of anticipate injuries when, for example, high-speed running is increasing too fast. So that kind of risk when the risk increase. What's interesting is that the acute chronic workload curves are fairly similar when you use the external load. So it could be total distance, number of sprints, etc., that you can measure through GPS or sensors. Or if you use the session RPE. So if you use an external load or internal load, well, you get fairly similar acute chronic workload curve. That's for Tim Gabbett here. So that's a complicated way to say that regardless if you use the session RPE or the acute chronic work or the GPS, well, you'll be able to predict risk or to anticipate risk. One advantage of the GPS is that it's entirely automatic. You just put this on the player, he runs, and then you get your numbers without asking the player anything. The problem is that because you don't ask the player anything, you don't get any feedback. The advantage of the session RPE is that you can monitor load, but also you get the feedback from the player because he can enter his comments when reporting his RPE. So if you value feedback from player, the session RPE is very powerful, and it will give you the same number in terms of risk management as the acute chronic, as the GPS. One of the inconvenience of the session RPE is that you need to ask the player needs to report data and provide you with honest answers. So that's why I mentioned the trust element earlier in the presentation. That's number one. If you want to use session RPE, you need to have good relationship with your players. You should establish a mutual trust relationship so they can provide you with very honest feedback and that you can use. If you don't trust your player, then just plug them with the GPS, and then you'll get, of course, a little bit less information, but at least you'll be able to track some metrics. Other load metrics that are important: the week-to-week load increase. So that's when you have a training load that is increasing more than 10 to 15% per week. You see here the big jump, 10% per week, 15% per week. You increase by 15%, the risk increase by 50%. That's from Gabbett paper. The monotony, that's a metric from Carl Foster back in late 90s. That's a fluctuation of training load within the week. So high monotony, typically above 2, is often linked to burnout and overtraining. And especially if you work with young athletes, the number of hours per week is very important to keep in check. That's from the work of Jayanti, the US sports scientist. He found that for high school players, high school athletes, sorry, when you increase the training, the overall training volume exceed 15 hours per week, then the risk increase a lot by up to 70% if you go over 16 hours per week. So that's very, very important to keep that in check when you work with young athletes. Other elements are extremely important too. In order to know if athletes are ready to train hard today, it's very important to monitor their readiness and their self-reported wellness. So the role of this wellness monitoring is that it helps you identify recovery and fatigue issues and all the different elements that can cause those problems. So for example, here you see this table here. That's an example of questionnaire, and here you have fatigue, sleep quality, soreness, stress level, and mood. So what you have here is that you have the two important metrics that you need to track that will determine the level of readiness. If athletes are rating a very high level of fatigue and very high level of soreness, well, you know that they will not be ready to work out today, so you better adjust your daily program. Sleep quality, stress, and mood will directly affect those recovery, those elements here, the fatigue, and even if just stress levels. If stress levels are very high, even if it's outside of the sport, this will affect the fatigue and this will affect the muscle soreness. So you have those two elements here that you need to track, determine the readiness. And then here you have the different elements, sleep quality, stress level, and mood that will affect, that will actually give you some insight about what's causing fatigue and soreness. Then you have personal feedback. So when athletes are giving you comments, sending you comments, or just verbally talking with you and mentioning issues, mentioning all kind of situations. So that's personal feedback. That's super important. So you can identify motivation issues, stress, fatigue, training issue, all kind of issues that you can address and by talking with the athlete. And enjoyment. Enjoyment is associated with sport dropout, especially in young, staleness, burnout, and it's also an important determinant of motivation. So, and not just athlete. Think about you. When you don't like something, usually you don't do it that for long. So enjoyment is critically important. Very often we tend to forget it, but that's an element that, in my view, should be part of any monitoring program. So now we will stop the formal presentation and we will move on the second part of the webinar, which is a presentation of AthleteMonitoring and how to monitor load with AthleteMonitoring. This is the AthleteMonitoring login page. So I'll be logging in first as a coach. So you'll see what the coach will see. So I enter my username, password, click sign in, and here I'm getting into the system. So the first thing I'll see, it's the list of team number 1, number 2, number 3. I have all my subgroups here. I can create as many subgroups as I want. And here at the top, I have the global menu. So here I can add my coaches, staff, send them password, keep note on them. I can customize all my settings. So if I want to use some my own test measurement, I can put them in. If I want to track exercises, I have an exercise library. I can also create preset workouts. Here I can customize all my questionnaires. And here if I want to import staff athletes, because I'm working with large group, I don't want to enter them one by one, then I can generate templates and then copy all my athletes and then import the file, and then this will generate account for all the athletes present on the template. Now, this is the team. To add a new team, sorry, I just click here on new team. I select I put the team name, select the sport, and create the team. Once the team is created, then the first thing I will see before inviting athletes, I click here on the team menu, and I will configure my team. So I can put my own matrix, my own questionnaire, customize the form a little bit. So I go over there, team settings, and here in general settings, I can turn the different modules on and off. So I can, if I don't want my athlete to be reporting injuries, I can deselect injury here on the athlete button on the injury tracking and save. And the injury tracking tab will not be visible on the athlete app. Here I can add my subgroups. Here I can customize my activities. I deselect the activity I don't need, and I can click the little plus to add the activity I want to add. I can customize the alerts. So you have wellness alerts here that you can show on the athlete and staff. If you want to deactivate the alert altogether, you can. You can also set having the system sending a summary every morning at the time of your choice, and this summary will be sent by email to the different recipients, so staff, doctors, coaches of your choice, and this report will list all the issues found, recovery issue, training issues, injuries found in the team. Here you can preset reminders, so if you want to automate increased compliance, you can automate post-session reminders, questionnaire reminder. If you want to send daily the training program every day, you can also select this. And finally, I can customize my wellness questionnaire. So I can change the category of questions, change my questions, change the answers, add, of course, additional questions. And here I can add my own custom field. So if I want to track additional measurements, such as a neuromuscular test, for example, a vertical jump, I can select, just scroll down, click the little plus, enter the matrix I wanted to create, select the unit, and select the type of analytics. So typically, if it's a daily measurement, we'll use the Z-score. And if it's a load-related metrics, you can use the acute-chronic ratio. Same thing for training. You can the post-training session. You can modify the form and also add your custom field. So if you are using session RPE, so that's pretty easy. But also you can add custom field to track distances. And if you work with GPS devices, then you can create over here, you can create custom field for running high intensity here, for example, player load, a percentage of high intensity, and then you can create those fields. You select import it, and then you'll be able to import the data from CSV or Excel files. So now, once I've set up my team, then I can add my athletes. To add an athlete, it's very simple. You click the little plus, you enter the information. The system is multilingual, so you can also select the team. The athlete can be part of several teams if you like. You can also import athletes right away. You can keep note on athletes, keep track of documents. And when you create an athlete, then the athlete will receive a notification by email, an invitation to create a password. When they create the password, they can get in. So now my athletes are ready to enter data, so I want to plan some session for them so they can record them. So I go here, click on planning, and then this is my calendar. So I can click on any white space and select who will be doing the session. I can select repetitive sessions as well. I put the activity I want to plan for them, the duration, the plan difficulty, maybe some comment, maybe some files, and then I send the session. So the load is calculated there, and as soon as it clicks send session, the player or the athlete will receive the session on their app. Now I'll log out and I'll log in as an athlete. So you can see how it works on the athlete side. So the first thing the athlete will see when they log in, it's going to be the wellness questionnaire. And the only thing they have to do is just to tap on the appropriate answer. Do you feel tired today? So they just answer the question. Do you feel sore? How is your health? How many hours did you sleep? How was your sleep? How is your mood? Do you feel stressed? And then if you have added those custom fields, then they can enter the numbers. And enter their comments. When this is done, then the questionnaire disappears for the rest of the day, and then their program will show up. This screen here shows only the session that you've planned for them. So when they see a session and they see a yellow button, it means that they have to click on it and record their data. So their RPE, their enjoyment level, you can hide enjoyment if you want to track that, and they can also enter their additional field and save the form. They can also attach files, video, and so on. So that's pretty straightforward. That's pretty quick. Yellow button, click on it, select the information, and you save. If they are doing something outside, especially with high school players or young athletes, they are, and even others that are involved with national teams and so on, well, they are training with the club, they are training with the different teams. So here they can record or self-report any activity they do outside of your program. They click on the little plus, they select the duration, they select the difficulty, they select the enjoyment, that's the date of today of which they did the session, and they submit the form. That's it, that's all. So now I'll log off and I'll go back as a coach. So now I want to see what's going on. So all my athletes are entering their data like this. One thing I didn't mention is that you can also import data from Excel spreadsheet. So if you have a GPS data, or if you also want to collect RPE and data yourself, asking the player on the side of the field, you can also export a spreadsheet, collect the data on your spreadsheet, and then import it. So now all the data is in. You want to see what's going on. So you click on the team name. And here you have your dashboard. So this dashboard is very important because it shows you the who needs attention and why. So in this case, well, that's not a good example here because everybody's in the red. But typically you'll get some guys in red, some others in yellow, and other one in green. And here what you have is the different metrics: acute chronic workload ratio, weekly load increase, monotony, and that's for this current week. So using last week and this week data, next week. And same thing for each load variable here. So even if you have planned a session for next week, you can see the impact the planned session will have on those different metrics. So you can anticipate issues in the future. So when you see issue like this, you can click or tap on the number. The system will suggest some changes to bring the athlete back in the high load, low risk zone. So you can do several things. Either you contact the athlete right there. You can click here to access his own individual data, or you can click here, and then you'll have a list of session planned for this athlete that is planned, and then you can decide, okay, well, I'm going to change this one. I can either delete it or I can just modify it to decrease the load. So I need to decrease that by a little bit. I forgot, about 200 units or so. So I just change that, and I change maybe the activity. Let's say this one. So now my load has been decreased, and then I have my weekly load increase that decreased as well. So all you can optimize training load very easily using those different alerts. You can click on the different alerts. You can edit the program, change the session just for this athlete because he needs that, and then automatically the athlete receive a notification by SMS. Saying that the activity has been changed. You can also open those, click on the alerts and get more details for each individual alert. Here you have wellness scores. So wellness scores are very important. Right there you can see, you know, this guy's in the red, so you can click on the red. And here you have the individual dashboard. So that's for today. That's the score today. Everything is in the red, so that's terrible. If you have a hard day planned for this guy today, well, you better decrease it because, or change the session because that's a perfect day of getting injured. So that's the score for yesterday. Oh, sorry, the score for yesterday, and that's the average for the month. So you can see, you can have different level of comparisons. You can also see trends over time, weekly data. So let me take this guy. Get a little bit more data. You have the different metrics over time, so you can compare objective and subjective. So even if you take HRV, but you can also compare HRV and fatigue and so on, so you can put everything on the graph. You can see the individual result or comments. If you want to see comments, over there you click comments, and then you have all the feedback left by athletes. This is very important because when you see things like that, well, it's better to either get back in touch with the athlete to see what's going on, or also you can just proactively modify the session to decrease or increase the load, or depending on what's needed. Here you have a list of injuries, and here you have the compliance alerts. All the athletes who forgot to enter the data, you can open this screen on a tablet, and before they come to the training room, they have to click on it, and they can record their questionnaire on the spot, so you don't miss anyone. Another element that is very important in the management of load is this one here, the graph. So on this graph, you have the wellness. The first tab here is the wellness graph. So if you want to put everyone on a single graph and analyze the wellness scores for all your athletes all at once, that's the way to do it. And then you can isolate some variable if you like. And so each color represents a wellness element, and the higher the bar, the worse the result. If you have custom field, you can also put them in and then track them over time. Here you can compare what was done, what was reported, what was planned, sorry, by the coach, what was reported by the athlete. For training load, for example, here, pink, in light green, it's the load, planned load, reported load in dark. And if you want to see the team load as well, you can see the average load reported by the team for the period. You can report, analyze data over time. And also this one is extremely important. That's the combined graph. And the advantage of this graph is that it's very useful in educating athletes, informing coaches, and also making decisions. The reason is that this graph shows everything on a single graph. So for example, here we have each bar represents a day, daily load. Each color represents the load for a category. So rehab, and here conditioning. So that gives you the 865, that's a daily load for this athlete. So the planned load, that's the future. The gray zone, the gray bar, sorry, those are the future. So that's the session that are planned for tomorrow and the next days. So you can see what did happen and what's coming up. So what you can do too is to display the chronic load. So that's, for the moment, the 4-week rolling average. We are currently in the process of adding more and more flexibility into that. So you can have a 6-week, you can have a 21 days. And also we'll be adding the exponential moving average as an option. But right now it's a 4-week rolling average, which is already a pretty effective way of monitoring that. So you can also have the acute load. That's a 1-week cumulative load. And here, from that already, you can see that at some point you get the acute load that is going way over the chronic load. So this means that this section here, athletes are training at a level that they are not used to. So you can anticipate issues by just looking at that. To illustrate that, you have the freshness score. So the freshness score indicates that provides an illustration of when athletes were likely to be tired and not ready to perform, and when they will be bouncing back So when it's going up like that, so that's the differential between acute and chronic. Then you can put the acute chronic workload ratio. So, and then you can see when it's going way over the normal range. Normal range typically 0.8, 1.3. That can fluctuate a little bit. Sometimes it is a little bit more, a little bit less. But typically when it goes over 1.4, 1.5, that's pretty dangerous. So you need to take care of that and to adjust load quickly. Typically, when you have peak of spike in acute chronic, you can expect injuries or issues within a frame of a window of 7 to 10 days. So it's not necessarily here you're going to get the injuries. You can also put the injuries over there by just selecting that, so you can see the issue. And so you not just here, but you need to take care of all the load that is planned for the next 10 days or so. Then also you can put a monotony. That's a fluctuation of workload within the week. Typically, that's a good way of detecting when all the load is perceived as being the same for the athlete. Typically, monotony is going way up when you don't have any rest day, like we have here. We have the block of 7-8 days without any rest, so you can see very big peaks in, and same thing here. Load is fairly similar, so very big peak in monotony here. And then if you have custom field, if you have your additional data that is coming up from different devices, you can it could be objective like this from GPS devices, or also it could be additional subjective scale, could be whatever you want. Actually, you can put it on a single graph like that and then put everything in perspective. You can see this graph for day, for week, for month. And of course, when you see elements like this who need attention, well, you can go back on your planning and then modify your program. That's a session that is planned. I can edit it for the entire team and change a session that I've planned for my entire team. And then go back to my dashboard, make sure everything is fine. And so that's kind of a loop. You collect data, the system analyzes data, point at issue. The system doesn't pretend to, or our philosophy is not that the system will tell you what to do. Identify issue, and then because you are an experienced coach, then you decide what's important for you. So either by using the research and the metric we provide, also you can put your own. And then the system analyzes that using statistical method and point out issues. And the level of needs attention or risk here, that the first column in red, it's calculated using those different elements. Of course, if you have health issues, you can also track those different elements if you work with a medical team. And then you can also add clinical notes to each incident. To add a note, it's very simple. Click the little green cross, select the different elements. You can also select tasks, enter sub notes, attach files, and save, of course. And so you can add as many notes as needed for each incident. Now, I know that I'm a little bit late, but I'd like to share a couple of slides about compliance. Often compliance is an issue. So those little tips probably help you increase compliance rate. So the first element, super important, is that compliance should be made mandatory by the head coach. If the head coach is not behind the monitoring project, it will not work. So the coach should be there when you present the monitoring process to athletes, and once in a while reminding athletes that the important is very useful and very important, and they have to enter it. Number two, athletes must understand the benefit of the program. If they don't understand that, if you don't explain them in simple terms why monitoring and why the time they will spend entering data or reviewing data or providing feedback is important, they will not do it. That's it. Athletes also must know who will access their data and what coaches will do with information. That's super important, especially with professional athletes. Also, you need to use a system or an app that is super quick and super fast and very easy to use, because you want to minimize the time the athlete will be entering the data. The longer it is for them to do, the lower the compliance. To increase compliance as well, an app education seminar, it's very important. You can see on the right side, we have a picture of young players during an app education seminar. And of course, if you send reminders through SMS, and that's a proven way to increase compliance as well. So the table beneath the picture illustrates the compliance rate before the seminar and before the SMS reminder for this group of players. So you see here the different age groups, and then that's the compliance rate for different age groups before they did the education seminar. So overall 42%, which not that so good, and here 13% of compliance. That's terrible. So they did the app education seminar, and then they implement the SMS reminder in the app, and then you can see here the post seminar, and with the reminders, compliance rate jumped. 1 out of 10 means that athletes will be reporting data that they did outside of the club. So the activity they did by themselves, they reported it. So you see for 47 to 97%, for 13 to 82. So that's very impressive results. Now for staff buying, if coaches are not behind the project, same thing, it will not work. They will not make change to the programs, and if they don't adapt the program based on what athletes have been reporting, well, the athlete will stop entering the data. So, and the program, the monitoring program will stop. So you need to build your monitoring program or implement the program with the collaboration of the sports coaches, the medical staff, and everyone who is around the players. Then you need to conduct a coach's application seminar, so they know how to enter data easily, or to get access to the dashboard, how to modify training when they need very, very quickly and effectively. And then you need also to organize some sessions, regular sessions, to discuss the finding and address any question regarding the load management. Then, of course, you need to present only the most meaningful data. Don't show everything. Don't show all the little graphs and all the little numbers. Just show the thing that will help coaches to make decisions. Long-term use. If you want the monitoring program to be here on the long term, the first condition is that, and that's actually valid for the during the implementation phase, the coaches must be open and ready to adapt programs based on athlete feedback. If they don't, well, athlete will stop entering data. They will not take the monitoring program seriously. When athletes say I'm exhausted, directly or indirectly, then you must adapt training. If athlete issues and comments are ignored, they will stop entering data and sharing feedback. So you need to take care of that. Athletes' data information should be kept confidential. You don't want to share things on Facebook and Twitter. Athletes will not like that at all. In data should never be used to athlete detrimental to punish them. If someone say I didn't like the session, or if another player say, well, I'm tired today, don't make fun of them. Have a discussion with the athlete, address the issue, and then fix it. But don't punish them because they say I'm tired and I didn't like the session. Take it as a positive and constructive criticism, and to take the opportunity to improve your program. So now we have a few minutes for some questions. So please don't hesitate. Yeah, this one will automatically resize based on the metric you have. Right now, it's you have one big one for one big scale here for the load. So that's going to be adjusted automatically, and one small one for acute, chronic, and all those monotony is kind of little numbers. So if you, for example, if you put wellness, automatically it will the wellness score will show up, and the graph and the scale will be adjusted.
Okay. Okay, so you have to pull wellness off if you want to kind of get a feel for what the acute to chronic work ratio looks like.
Exactly. Well, wellness will be there, but yeah, that's probably best to remove it. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Currently, we don't support exponentially weighted moving average. but we are currently in the process of adding this feature to the calculation. Currently we don't support, but we are currently adding it. So within a couple of weeks, this feature will be available for any subjective metrics and also objective data. So even if you use GPS data, you'll be able to import the GPS data into the system and then analyze it using the exponentially weighted moving average. To import data from GPS software is very simple. First, you need to have a session plan on your calendar. Then you click on the session. You click on the blue button. You end up with a spreadsheet. Then on this spreadsheet, you just locate the column that includes the custom field you created. So in this field will be used to host the GPS data. So that's the first step. The second step, you go to your GPS software, you export the data, the GPS data, into a CSV file. You paste it there. You save this file. Then you come back here, you click on this yellow button, you select the file here, and you click import. And all your GPS data will be transferred into AthleteMonitoring. And when this is done, then you can have all the alerts and all the issue automatically detected on the dashboard. So that's very, very quick. So this way you can import data from all kinds of devices. And also we do have some direct import from FirstBit and VX GPS devices. So VX, for example, they do have a export to AthleteMonitoring button. You click on that, you end up with a CSV file that you can import as is right there. You select the file and then you import the GPS data. And when it's done, then you can add those GPS field on your dashboard like this. That's player load. That's the high intensity running. So you can add all those elements right into your dashboard and then having the system analyzing using the ratio system, acute chronic, right onto your dashboard. So you can see what's going on. If you see some red, you can click on it and then you get access to the data for individual and also for the team, because you can also generate on the command graph. You can see, you can put your custom field hosting the GPS data. The price of the system depends on the number of athletes and the type of athletes. We do have special price for youth, elite, university professionals, and all those prices are depending of the number of athletes. So if you want a quote, we'll be happy to do that. Just go on our website, athletemonitoring.com. You go on pricing, anywhere over there, you select the option that better fits your needs. You get some example here, and then for a personalized quote, you just click request quote, and we'll get back to you very shortly. You can manage all the medical aspects, record injuries, illnesses, pain. So you have body map, you select the level of pain, you select the different elements, the different mechanisms, classification. So one, that's to report an injury. Athlete can also self-report injuries. You can then have your individual dashboard for injuries, track notes, medical notes, and then you can also have very quick injury stats over there. You click the little pie chart, you select the period, and then automatically you get those charts. You can export all those charts. And in addition to that, if you want to export all the data over there, login stats, and I didn't mention that, but for training as well, you can export all the training data along with some statistics. So that's the raw data, and same thing for injury. So you can end up with injury stat, number of missed day, injury rate, and all the different details. So if you want to build your own stat and your own graph, you can get all the data right there very quickly. For the injury data, athletes can self-report injury data using their smartphone app. So thank you very much for your time. It was very appreciated. I wish you a great weekend, and hopefully you find this little meeting informative and interesting. Thank you.